Hi guys, this is Hyunmin Max aka Max. Welcome to the first ever Fantasy Premier League video on the channel. Today, I'm actually going to be talking about which players to buy, sell or monitor ahead of Gameweek 3. So for those brand new to the channel, let me do a short self-introduction, as to why this channel will be really helpful for you to actually win your mini leagues, basically get a very good FPL rank. I've actually been playing Fantasy Premier League for 9 years now, This is my 9th season. My best rank finish, was actually 30k and 57. So if you guys actually played fantasyleague.com, it's a slightly different format to FPL, but I actually came in second in the world, back during the Euro 2012 tournament whereby Spain actually won it. And I actually only lost to the first guy, by 1 point because I got a little bit emotional. I chose Wayne Rooney over another player because I'm an England fan. So I actually watch all the Premier League games. So if there's actually like 4 to 5 3 p.m. kickoff games, I try to watch at least 3. One on my television and then 2 on my phones. So for those other games that I can't watch, I actually try to catch the highlights. I enjoy doing this, because it makes FPL more fun, and I'm actually really crazy about football, I watch so much football. So before we start the video, shout out to Inverts. He actually helped with all the graphics, on this video. So if you actually need help for your graphics, he can actually do it for you at a very reasonable price. Do check him out. The link will be down in the description below, Shout out to Inverts once again. Thank you for the graphics. Let's get straight into the video itself. So right off the bat, I know this is gonna be a controversial one. But lots of experts have been talking about, being patient with Bruno and giving Bruno one more week, Let me explain why selling Bruno, it's actually a good idea. So if you guys actually follow the experts template team, y'all will probably have a double Arsenal, double United, as well as Mbeumo, That's like the standard template kind of a midfield. So Bruno actually have a free header against Spurs in the previous game. He didn't score. Man United overall, just didn't look that impressive in the opening 2 games, in my opinion. We really got away with it, against Wolves because Wolves couldn't finish their dinner. Against Spurs, we looked good in spells, for the first half, and then in the second half, we just got dominated. So I think the major issue we have, is actually in midfield. So Ten Hag, is actually trying to implement a 4-3-3, but with Casemiro, as the only out-and-out defensive midfielder, we look kind of lightweight in the center of the midfield. If you guys actually watch the games, you will realize that Wolves and Spurs, players will actually really easily, dribble through the whole midfield on a couple of occasions. So I don't think Bruno and Mount are actually good enough defensively. We probably need another CDM to help Casemiro out. We're not like Man City. Man City is so good that they could just play with one CDM and have like 2 central attacking midfielders in the form of KDB and Bernardo Silva. We're not that good. So hopefully, United actually signs Amrabat and our midfield actually improves. So Mount actually, just picked up an injury. So I expect to see Eriksen, filling for Mount. And Casemiro will be the defensive midfielder, and then of course Bruno will be on the other side of him. We do, however, have Nottingham Forest up next at Old Trafford, which, to be honest, Forest actually looks pretty decent in their first 2 games, They lost narrowly to Arsenal. So after that, we actually have games against Arsenal and Brighton, The 2 of them and Man City, are actually the only 3 teams to have won their first 2 games. So I do expect the Arsenal game to be kind of tough, kind of tight. However, I think there's going to be plenty of goals, in the Brighton game because of how the manager wants them to play, basically. So the key thing for me is this, The key thing as to why I want you guys to sell. I think if you all have a double up on Bruno and Rashford, I don't think that's very wise given how well the other midfielders, have been performing. If a double up in an attack, works really well if, that particular team, does really well. But at this point in time, I just feel like having 2 Man United midfielders in Bruno and Rashford, is probably too much. Especially, your other popular midfielders, likes of your Mitoma, Mbeumo, they're all firing right now, actually makes that midfield slot, so much more precious. If your midfield, is not actually giving you points, you should look to rectify that as soon as possible, in my opinion. So for me, if you have a double up of Bruno and Rashford, it's a self-Bruno for me. Let's move on and talk about, who you can potentially, replace Bruno with. So for me, Brighton looked absolutely fantastic, in their first 2 games against Luton and Wolves. They won both games 4-1. And they're actually so attacking. They actually never ever seem, right, satisfied with just scoring 1 or 2 goals, right? They just want more and more goals, which is, of course, right, fantastic news for us FPL managers. So for me, Mitoma, right, is the standout option in this Brighton team. I actually think that he's actually the talisman. You know, he can create chances for his teammates because of his fantastic dribbling ability. Of course, he can also score on his own, right? If you guys actually, you know, are fans of like expected goals, right? He's actually having the highest expected goals last season, right? Without actually scoring much. So if that's something that he can improve on, right, he's gonna be an even better asset. So as of right now, he already has 1 goal and 2 assists. If you actually watch the games, you realize that he probably should have so much more, which actually makes him even a greater option. So he has West Ham up next. West Ham actually has one of the worst defense in the Premier League last season. And then, of course, we have difficult games, right, against Newcastle and Man United in the following 2 games. Of course, like I already mentioned, right, Man United doesn't really look that good, especially if we don't sort out that midfield, right. I can see lots of goals, and I can definitely see Brighton scoring goals, and Mitoma will probably play a part in that. And we also know that the Brighton manager, right, he doesn't really care about the opposition. He just wants to attack, right, no matter who he faces. So, to be honest, right, if Brighton had like easier games, right, I probably would recommend a double up with Solly March, right? That's how good I think Brighton is. So if you don't have Carol Mitoma, I would say, right, he's probably your number 1 midfielder, right, that you need to bring him in, right? I think he's actually a must-have. So the next person I want to talk about is actually, right, Marcus Rashford. Now, again, this might be a little bit controversial. Why am I talking about selling Bruno and monitoring Marcus Rashford? Because, you know, lots of people are actually talking about the fact that Rashford, right, doesn't like to play through the middle, right? It's well documented that he prefers playing off the left, cutting inside and then shooting with his right foot instead of playing with his back to goal as a number 9. So for those of you who actually watch Man United, right, you guys will remember that when Rashford first broke onto the scene, right, he actually played through the middle as a number 9. Remember all those goals he scored against Liverpool and City where he broke through the middle? So he personally, right, might not like playing as a number 9, but for me, right, I actually think he's great through the middle, right, especially, right, when we want to play on the counter attack. So if you take a look at, you know, in Game Week 4 and Game Week 5, right, we play Arsenal in Game Week 4. I can most definitely see us, you know, letting Arsenal have most of the ball and then trying to hit Arsenal on the break. And if that's the case, right, whether Rashford plays off the left or on the right, I think that's inconsequential because I think he's actually gonna get points, right? No matter what you wanna say, Ten Hag has been trying to make us, you know, play a possession style kind of a high press kind of a football. But as of right now, we're definitely a much more dangerous side, right? Playing on the counter attack instead. We're definitely slowly getting better at what Ten Hag wants us to do, but, you know, there's no denying that on the break in transition, right, I would have to say that we remain one of the best teams, right, in the Premier League as a counter-attacking team. And you can bet that Rashford will score some points. That's why I prefer Rashford over Bruno. And, you know, in Game Week 5, like I mentioned, Brighton is definitely going to attack. So I see that game, right, being really open with Rashford definitely, right, having plenty of space to run in behind given how high Brighton likes to press. So in the upcoming game, right, in Game Week 3 against Forest, right, I actually expect Ten Hag, right, to play Rashford on the left, and then probably Marcel or Sancho, right, will play through the middle, and Anthony will start out on the right. That's how I think, you know, Ten Hag will line up. Now, Garnacho, right, was actually pretty good in the first game against Wolves. However, right, in the second game against Spurs, right, he was actually not that great. So for me, I think Garnacho will drop out for the team. So if you actually have Rashford, I would keep him. If you don't have him, I would say, right, he's actually a player, right, that you can monitor and look to bring in. Now, another midfielder, right, that's really, really hot right now, right, is Brian Mbeumo. I would say he got really lucky with 2 penalties in consecutive games. Now, the first one against Spurs, right, was definitely, I would say, a penalty. But the previous game against Fulham, that penalty was kind of soft in my opinion. He also did hit the crossbar against Spurs, right? He also blasted over a very, very good chance. And, you know, against Fulham, right, he actually scored with the last kick of the game. Overall, I would say, right, the fact that he actually has 3 goals, right, 2 is kind of lucky in my opinion, but, you know, points are points, right? And with the fact that Tony is actually out right now, right, Mbeumo, as you guys can see, right, it's a 90 minutes man. So we love Mbeumo, right? Unlike somebody like I'm going to talk about later on in the form of Wissa. So Mbeumo is 100%, right? In the absence of Tony, right? Their talisman right now. Everything is going to go through to him. And upcoming, right, he also has really good fixtures, right? Palace, Bournemouth, and then he has Everton in game week 6 and Forest in game week 7. So all of these teams, right, are actually defensively suspect with the exception of Newcastle, I would say. So good fixture run. Brentford basically just knows what they're doing, right? With Thomas Frank at the helm, they have a very, strong identity as to how they want to play. So I love Mbeumo. And remember that I said at the beginning of the video, whereby, Mbeumo is owned by most of your expert template team. So for me, right, it's actually time to get his points too. Right? He's the second midfielder, right, I will look to bring in, right, after Mitoma. So on to defenders next, right? So for the sell column, we have Gabriel. So for those of you who were unlucky and y'all actually didn't manage to get Gabriel out for Saliba, during the chaotic game week 1, right? The point swing is actually kind of nasty, right? Saliba has 13 points with that Jamie Saka assist, while Gabriel, right, only has 2 points because he actually came out as a substitute in the first 2 games. Now, he was brought on, right, as a third centre-back in the first game against Forest to protect the lead in the last few minutes. In the previous game against Palace, he got brought on as a sub for Martinelli, right, after Tomiyasu was actually given a red card. Now, Tomiyasu is actually suspended for 1 game because it's 2 yellows and not a straight red. However, right, take note that Zinchenko was actually back on that bench, right, for the previous game. So he came on in the 89th minute for Odegaard, which actually tells me that Zinchenko, right, is actually not fully fit yet. And Arteta probably doesn't trust his fitness yet, given how injury prone he has been for the past 2 seasons. Now, there are also rumors, right, that the Saudi League clubs actually want to sign Gabriel, right? But that has now been quashed. But we actually have more rumors that Real Madrid actually wants him, right, as cover after Adam Militao, right, actually torn his ACL. According to what I've read, right, he's actually really happy at Arsenal. But to be honest, right, when clubs like Madrid comes calling for you, right, it's actually very hard, right, to not get your head turned by, such a big club. So will Gabriel start in, the next game? That's what everybody wants to know, right? So I'm actually really good at calling out, right, the players that the managers want to sub on and off. Most of the time I get it spot on. So that's another reason why you should watch the channel. So, it actually all depends, right, on whether Arteta, right, for me, wants to drop Kai Havertz. So let's take a look at how Arsenal started in the previous game. My apologies, I don't have a nicer graphic. I'm probably going to work on this, but for now, this will have to suffice. So this was the starting lineup against Crystal Palace, right, in game week 2. We all know that on paper, right, Thomas Partey is a right back, but, actually when Arsenal has the ball in possession, right, he actually moves into that CDM role, right, alongside Declan Rice. So he's basically an inverted fullback. So it could very well be that, Zinchenko, right, just comes in as a left back, as a straight sword for Tomiyasu, and then Arteta keeps that lineup. Another possibility is the fact that Arteta could drop Kai Havertz, right, put Thomas Partey into Kai Havertz's position, and then basically has Rice and Partey in the middle alongside Odegaard, right, the 3 of them as a 4-3-3. And then Ben White will probably go out to right back, and then Gabriel will probably be the left centre back, while Saliba will be the right centre back. Right? And then, of course, Zinchenko is going to be the left back. That's scenario number 2. Scenario number 3, right, I can see possibly Nketiah maybe being dropped, and then Kai Havertz moves in as the false 9. Again, the back line is the same. Partey is going to move as a CDM, and then Zinchenko coming in at left back, and Gabriel, right, taking that left centre-back slot. So out of all these 3 scenarios, right, I think there's a huge chance, right, that probably Zinchenko is probably just going to come in straight for Tomiyasu, and then Partey is going to go into that CDM role with Kai Havertz being dropped. And of course, Gabriel is actually going to be playing as the left centre-back, right, besides Saliba. I think that is the, the most likely situation that will happen. Because the thing is this, right, if you guys watch Arsenal games, right, Nketiah has actually been playing really well, and I kind of feel like, Havertz, right, he's still trying to find his feet at Arsenal, but he hasn't really been playing well, so that will actually make a lot of sense. So you guys might be wondering, right, if you think that Gabriel will start, right, why are you still asking us to sell Gabriel? So once Tomiyasu, right, becomes eligible for selection in game week 4 against Man United, right, you're actually going to have that headache again. So I personally, right, would sell and move on to other defenders, especially this upcoming one, right, if you don't have. So the player that I'm actually talking about, right, is Ben Chilwell. Now, if you guys look at the game week 2 minutes, right, he was actually substituted off, right, in the 60th minute against West Ham. Now, Chelsea started with a 3-4-3 formation, and when Chilwell was substituted off, right, they actually moved to a 4-3-3. Right, he was actually coming off for Salcedo. Now, what is interesting to note is the fact that Colwell, right, he actually played at left back instead of Chilwell. Definitely surprising for me, right? I think Poch actually wanted to gain control of that midfield against West Ham, and he thought a change of shape would help. So it's also worth noting, right, that Poch also played 3-4-3 against Liverpool in the first game. Now, I wouldn't really worry too much because I think 3-4-3 is kind of the formation for him to go to. I think he possibly, right, wants to protect Thiago Silva, right, because of the fact that he actually turns, right, 39 next month. That's the reason why he actually goes to a 5-back. For Chilwell, it's absolutely fantastic because he can bomb forward, right, more as a left wing back as compared to a left back. He's going to have so much more presence in that penalty area. Now, Chilwell, in this particular game against West Ham, right, he was still very far forward. You know, he was still taking touches and taking shots inside the penalty area. So for me, right, he's a must-have defender to own. And if you guys, right, actually take a look at the fixtures run, right, it actually looks fantastic, right? For the upcoming 6 game weeks, you know, Luton at home, Forest at home, Bournemouth away, Villa is a bit tough, right? Fulham away, Burnley away, right? All these are really, really good fixtures. I can actually see, right, clean sheets for him, right, against Luton, Forest, and possibly Fulham. Hopefully I don't jinx it. And of course, add to the fact that how often Chilwell goes forward, right? He is a number 1 defender you must have, right? For me personally. Let's move on, right? And talk about what are some of the other players, right? Forwards you should be selling. For me, João Pedro. So right from the start, I don't really understand why people are so hyped for João Pedro. I don't know where all the clamour is coming from, right? Lots of people, lots of experts are actually recommending João Pedro. Now the thing with De Zerbi, if you guys don't know, is this, right? He loves to rotate his team, right? I feel like personally, right, he makes Pep, right, look like an amateur. He makes Pep Roulette, right, look like a joke. With the amount of different players, right, and formations, right, he actually goes through, right, in a single game. Now, the only kind of lock in his front four, in my opinion, right, is probably Mitoma. That's why I really, really like him as an option. Take, for example, right, he loves rotating between Welbeck and Ferguson, Evan Ferguson, right, for that striker role. And then he loves to rotate his center halves, right? In the first game, he played Van Hickel, right? In the second game, he dropped him for Adam Webster. And remember last season, right, he was alternating frequently, right, between Sanchez and Steele. And this season, right, he also alternates between Gross, Veltman, and Milner, right, at right back. So if you look at Brighton, right, I would say just treat De Zerbi, right, like Pep. And when Europa League actually starts for Brighton, right, expect there to be way more rotation and chaos in Brighton's lineup. Now, the funny thing with João Pedro is, you know, he didn't start in game week 2, right? He came on for the last 33 minutes, right? He actually, right, didn't come on for Enciso, who was actually playing in his number 10 position, right? He replaced Welbeck instead as the number 9, which tells me, again, there's actually going to be yet more headaches. If you really want somebody from that Brighton team, right, I would suggest, right, save yourself that headache and go for Mitoma. Now, the next player that I actually want to talk about, if you're actually looking to move away from João Pedro, is actually Wissa, right? I love Wissa. This guy, right, has always been a fantastic super sub if you have been playing Fantasy League, right? So last season, he started 16 games in the Prem, right? He was subbed on, right, in the other 22 games. He has 7 goals and 3 assists. So that's an attacking return, right, every 2 starts. So if you go further back, another season to 2021 and 2022, right, he started 12 games, got subbed on for about 18 games, and he has 7 goals and 1 assist. So his points per 90 minutes, right, are always very impressive. But the issue with him is always that, you know, he doesn't get to start because last season, right, Tony and Mbeumo are actually the 2 preferred strikers for Thomas Frank. Now, Tony is actually suspended, and he actually gets to start right now. And if you guys actually watch, right, he definitely knows where the back of the net is. I have been really impressed with this guy, right, for a good 2 seasons now. Because, you know, every time he plays, he scores. So, don't expect him to last 90 minutes, right? As you guys can see, in Game Week 1, he played 71 minutes. In Game Week 2, he played 78 minutes. But I don't really care, right? This guy, right, already has a proven track record for the past 2 seasons, right, that he doesn't need 90 minutes, right, to score you points. I expect him, right, to easily start, you know, 8 or 9 out of the next 10 games, right, alongside Mbeumo, right, until, right, Tony is available for selection again, right, in January next year. It's a very safe pick for now. The next player, right, on this list is actually Phil Foden, and he falls under the monitor. I know right now, right, there are lots of hype surrounding him. You know, he was fantastic against Newcastle, and rightly so, right? I watched that game. He was absolutely, right, great in that game. He was constantly, right, looking to fit Haaland with all his true balls. And on another day, right, he probably would have finished with more than one assist, because on that day, Haaland finishing wasn't actually really that great. I have been hurt by Foden a lot, right, in the previous seasons. Maybe I'm mentally scarred by that. If you guys remember, right, last season, right, Pep actually benched him after he scored a hat-trick. So I don't think that Pep fully trusts Foden after an incident last season. I remember that he was actually playing for quite a long stretch last season, and then halfway through the season, right, he just got dropped and he never made it back to the starting 11. So I guess, right, there must be something that had went on, right, behind the scenes that we don't know about, and Foden, right, actually has a lot to do, right, before he can actually get Pep's trust back. And not to mention the fact that Bernardo Silva, right, might return for the next game, right, if he actually recovers from illness. And I would like to think that Foden is the first one to be dropped, more likely to be dropped than Alvarez. Take note, right, that City, right, has actually also signed a winger in Doku for £55 million. Now, this is really significant because if you guys realize, right, when Foden plays, right, he usually plays on the wing for City. He doesn't really play in that central midfield slot. And part of the reason, right, why he couldn't get into City's team last season, right, was because of the fact that, you know, Grealish was magnificent, right, on the left wing, and then Mahrez was also great on the right. That's the reason why he didn't get to play. Now, City, right, might yet sign another midfielder before the transfer deadline, given how they have actually tried and failed to sign Lucas Paqueta from West Ham. So, more competition for Foden with Doku plus Bernardo Silva returning, for me, right, means Foden is a monitor first. Now, to be honest, right, I don't really think that Foden is worth that risk, you know, the minutes risk and the risk of whether he will start, given how many good midfielders we have right now who are guaranteed minutes. Plus, their teams and them, right, are actually playing really, really well. So, you know, the likes of Mitoma, Mbeumo, for me, right, are all way better options than Foden. So, for me, Foden really, right, it's not a player that I really, really want to buy. Now, one player, right, that has 100% flown under the radar this season, right, that no expert is talking about, right, is Diego Jota. And, you know, because people actually think, right, Luis Diaz is actually a better option. For me, Jota is kind of similar to Wissa, right? Whenever he plays, he scores, right? The only issue is always the minutes. So last season, he actually started 12 games, was subbed on in 10 games. He has 7 goals and 4 assists. So that is exactly, right, an attacking return, right, every 2 games, even if you count, you know, him coming on as a sub, right, as 1 game. So that is an absolutely, right, mental stat to have, right? He is just so good at finishing. And in the 2021 to 2022 season, this guy started 27 times. He got 15 goals and 6 assists, right? That is almost an attacking return, right, every single game. So this guy is a tested and proven, right, goal scorer, right, and points magnet. So right now, right, in this current team this season, right, he plays as the number 9 with Salah and Luis Diaz either side of him. So in the first 2 games, right, Klopp played McAllister as the CDM with Slobozai and Gakpo either side of him. Now, that didn't work really well, right, because Gakpo is not even a central midfielder. We know he's a left winger by trade. Sometimes he plays as a striker. However, Klopp likes to play him there because Gakpo can press really, really well. And definitely McAllister, right, is better as a box-to-box. The guy is not a CDM. That is why Liverpool, right, concedes actually lots of goals and chances. Now, they have just signed Endo. And I think for the upcoming game week, right, Endo will start as a CDM against Newcastle, and then McAllister and Slobozai will start either side of him. Now, McAllister's red card has just been rescinded, so I think he will start. The thing with Jota is this, right, I feel like, right, Klopp really likes Gakpo, like I mentioned, because Gakpo can really execute that first man press, some sort of, like, you know, similar to Bobby Firmino when he actually was playing for Liverpool. Klopp likes Gakpo so much, right, that if you guys actually remember last season, right, Darwin got shunted out onto the left wing, and Gakpo actually played through the middle. So this serves as a reminder to us as to how much Klopp actually likes Gakpo. Now, let's talk about the next game week, right? The most immediate game week 3. Salah will definitely start out on the right against Newcastle. Gakpo might start through the middle, with Jota, right, being shifted out to the left-hand side. I see that being a possibility. However, right, it's also kind of hard to say who exactly Klopp will drop, right, between Jota and Luis Diaz, right, to accommodate Gakpo, given how well Luis Diaz has played in the first 2 games as well. It's definitely risky, right? But for me, right, I think it's actually a risk worth taking given how good Liverpool look, right, going forward. Every time they go forward, they look like they're gonna score against anybody in the first 2 games. So, if you actually need to free up funds elsewhere, like for example, right, you wanna downgrade Salah to somebody and still have coverage for Liverpool's attack, right? I would say it's actually a really, really good idea to actually get Jota in. Now, under the monitor list, right, we have James Maddison. So right now, he's actually flagged. He actually has a foot injury, and he was actually seen leaving the stadium, right, in a protective boot on his left boot. So a scan reveals, right, he has a minor MCL strain. Based on Paul O'Keefe's tweet, right, this guy is the Spurs expert, if you guys don't know. He mentioned that he don't think that the injury is significant, and the recovery will probably be really, really quick. But however, right, Spurs might just choose to protect him this weekend and not play him from the start. So I definitely trust this guy, Paul, because, he knows his Spurs stuff. What I think is he's probably going to be on the bench, right? I don't think he will start. And in the worst case scenario that Spurs needs him, he might possibly come on. But if Spurs were to actually win the game really comfortably, right, or lead the game, right, I don't think Maddison will come on. However, I think that he should be back by game week 4 for the Burnley game, right? So this is what I think, right, will actually happen. Even without the injury, right, I would say I prefer Maddison over Richarlison, because Richarlison definitely, right, seems kind of out of sorts at the moment. Maddison has also taken the free kick and corner duties, right, off Son. So I guess he might probably be on pens, but I reckon Richarlison is probably the one that will actually take the penalties for Tottenham. So for me, Maddison looks really, really good. Everything goes through him, and I really like him as an FPL option. So if you guys actually watch Spurs, right, they're actually very attacking under their new manager, Postecoglou. He did also mention in an interview, right, that the only way he knows, right, is actually to attack, and that's the reason why Spurs actually hired him. So if you are somebody who has Maddison, right, I will hold on to him. I think that he's actually going to be back for game week 4. And then thereafter, they actually have a couple of nice games. Arsenal might be tough, but for sure, as of right now, Liverpool's defense look really open. So definitely, right, want to monitor, right, ahead of game week 4. Shout out to Inverts, who actually, right, helped me design all the graphics for this video. Do drop him a follow on Twitter, and if any one of you, right, has something that you need people to design for a really reasonable cost, right, you can actually reach out to Inverts. This is his handle on Twitter. I'll leave his link down in the description below. Thank you, Invert, so much for the graphic. And I'll actually be live on both YouTube and Twitch, right, at 5:30 p.m. UK time on Friday to actually do a deadline stream to help out you guys with your FPL teams. So if you actually need help, do pop by the stream on YouTube or on Twitch, right? Link will be down below. And I'll actually get to as many teams as I can as to what kind of transfers we have. And of course, we will actually see if we have any early team news leak that will definitely affect our decision as to who to buy and who to sell. And of course, right, this channel is in its infancy. Expect to see an improvement in the graphics, right, for the upcoming videos. I'm gonna work with my guy Inverse on that. And of course, expect to see at least 2 YouTube videos, right, for the FPL channel every week. I'll see how the reception is like. So if you guys want to see more of such YouTube videos for your FPL, do let me know down in the comment section below. And yeah, that's all, man. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you guys want to see more of FPL content, right, do hit that sub button. And I hope to see you guys on the deadline stream on Friday, 5:30 p.m. UK time. And I'm out. Alright, take care, guys.